Okay, let's talk about a relationship dynamic that, I mean, it seems like it's everywhere. In books, in movies, and, in way too many real-life situations.
The love triangle.
Exactly. It's this exhausting, often really painful pattern. But today, we're going to skip the surface-level drama. We're going to go deeper than just, bad luck or coincidence, and really dig into the psychological wiring that drives some people to find this exact pattern over and over again.
And our sources for this deep dive, they pull directly from classic psychoanalytic theory, which I have to say offers a pretty radical perspective on this.
Radical how?
It basically posits that for people who repeatedly find themselves in these dynamics, with themselves, a partner and a rival, this is not an accident.
So it's a blueprint.
It's a behavioral blueprint, an unconscious command, really, that's driven by something that happened very, very early in life.
Okay, so let's unpack this. Our mission here is to get past the symptoms and really understand the deep hidden stuff.
The mechanisms, yeah.
We want to identify those specific childhood conditions.
Please like, subscribe, and leave a comment. You are doing important work.
And the huge psychological defenses that create this unconscious, compelling need to recreate these triangles in adulthood. And we're zooming in on one pivotal period.
The Oedipal phase.
The Oedipal phase.
That is the foundation. I mean, the Oedipal phase, or just that broader stage of early childhood development, that's where we first figure out our relationship to things like rivalry and love and exclusion.
It's our first look at it.
It's where a child first tries to understand their place in that primal unit, the parents. This stage is absolutely central to how we later choose our partners. It's the time when, theoretically, we learn to accept that two-person bond, that mom and dad are a unit and you're, separate.
And that allows you to then form your own stable two-person bonds later.
Precisely.
So if successfully getting through this phase means accepting that mom and dad are this separate unit, let's start there. Let's distinguish between the two paths our sources lay out. What does the emotionally easy experience look like?
It's really defined by security. And by successfully resolving that initial sense of competition.
Okay.
The sources say that individuals who get through the stage without much trouble are those who had a very stable, kind of ordinary family environment.
Both parents in the picture.
They had a mother and a father figure or, equivalent caregivers, and they had consistently good relationships with both. They always felt fundamentally loved and secure.
And crucially, the parents were stable.
Yes, that's the key. The child didn't experience abandonment or, say, long periods of separation from their primary objects of affection.
So that stability, that consistency, it acts like an emotional shock absorber.
That's a great way to put it.
It lets that normal developmental stage, that healthy competition for attention, it lets it pass without forming some kind of permanent emotional scar. You learn the rules without getting, fundamentally wounded.
Exactly. They might feel a moment of jealousy, of course, but they quickly learn that the parents' bond doesn't cancel out their love for the child. They internalize that love isn't a zero-sum game.
But our focus for this deep dive is the opposite experience.
Right.
The specific group of people who are emotionally wounded during this phase. This is what sets up the core conflict we see repeated in adult love triangles. So, if stability is the shock absorber, what happens when it fails? What actually triggers this wound?
The formation of the wound, it comes from this profound sense of exclusion and scarcity. The source material points to two main factors that usually come together.
Okay, what's the first?
First, there was often a real objective scarcity of parental time and energy. The parents gave them very little attention, neglecting some of those fundamental childhood needs for connection, for validation.
Right, that's straightforward neglect,
Yeah.
which we know causes attachment issues. But what's the specific ingredient that leads to the triangle blueprint, not just general anxiety?
That's the second factor, and it is far more critical. It's that the child's primary object of love, and that could be the mother or the father, was perceived as strongly loving someone else instead of them.
Instead of them.
Instead is the key word. It's not just that love exists between the parents. It's that the child feels that the parent's love for the other adult is actively denying them love.
Wow. So the child doesn't just see a strong bond between their parents. They unconsciously conclude that their parents only love each other, or maybe they favor a sibling more, and that means the child is just permanently locked out.
Yes. And that realization, according to the sources, is just too painful for a young ego to handle consciously.
It would be devastating.
To a child, exclusion feels like a survival risk. And here's where the psychological mechanism gets really interesting.
Okay.
A child's mind isn't really equipped for, objective reality testing, especially not in these emotionally charged situations. Their imagination tends to magnify the parental bond.
A magnification effect. What do you mean by that?
Well, think of it like a funhouse mirror that's pointed right at the parents' relationship. The child isn't just seeing a normal, functional adult couple. Their psyche multiplies the parents' love for each other tenfold, 100-fold. It becomes this vast, mythical, unbreakable bond in the child's mind.
And it's totally exclusive.
Perfectly exclusive. And this can happen regardless of what's actually going on. The parents could be fighting all the time, but the child's perception is that they share this intense, impenetrable connection, and that the child is locked out of it forever.
That is such a critical distinction. It means the wound isn't just from objective neglect, but from the child's magnified, painful perception of that bond.
Exactly. It's the sheer weight of this perceived exclusion that creates a deep, unresolved desire.
A desire to do what?
To claim their object of love at any cost, to shatter that mythical bond and become the one, the only, the most loved figure. This creates a relentless internal struggle.
It's a need to take the mother from the father, or the father from the mother.
Or to just fiercely compete with siblings for that emotional throne. This is the struggle that never got resolved back then. The competition was just too painful to win and way too terrifying to lose.
And if it doesn't get resolved in childhood, the person doesn't just move on. They carry that unfinished business with them like an emotional magnet, always looking for a situation where they can replay the scene.
And that has to be the connection to the adult pattern.
To constantly getting into love triangles.
Precisely. The person who always finds themselves in these triangles, either as the third party or as the partner who finds their relationship constantly threatened by a third party, has an unconscious need to recreate the Oedipal conflict.
They're seeking the one environment that feels familiar.
Familiar and compelling. The three-person dynamic.
But wait, how does an old conflict about mom and dad translate so specifically into, say, dating someone who's already engaged? Or pursuing a married partner? What's the direct mechanism there?
The dynamic is replicated because the stakes feel correct. They aren't looking for calm, stable, one-to-one love because, that doesn't resonate with their deep psychological blueprint.
It's not exciting enough.
It's not the right shape. They're unconsciously looking for a relationship structure where they can insert themselves and compete to create that high-stakes, charged, rivalrous environment.
They're trying to replicate that dynamic where there was a primary object, the parent they wanted, a rival,
the other parent or a sibling,
and me in the middle, fighting to create a happy family. But a happy family where they are finally the central, most loved person.
Yes. And that explains why these relationships often feel so intensely urgent or even like destiny to the person in the cycle.
It feels like the most important thing they've ever done.
Because psychologically it is. They are reliving the ultimate unresolved conflict of their childhood. They are drawn in by a psychological gravity.
So they keep inserting themselves into existing relationships, trying to win that parent figure from the rival.
Right. And the sources really emphasize the terrifying familiarity of this pattern. They aren't chasing love. They're chasing resolution. They are trying to rewrite the script from that play they lost when they were 5.
And what about the mirroring aspect? The sources mention that if a child grew up seeing their own parent have a lover, they might just replicate that exact behavior.
That's a very common specific manifestation of it, yes. If the parent's primary relationship was disrupted by a third party, the child learns that the highest stakes, the most intense emotional charge, exists within the triangle.
So they internalize that the path to real connection runs through a third person.
Exactly. That child, as an adult, may then be subconsciously drawn to partners who are already attached. Or, on the flip side, they become the partner who brings in the external variable. The family dynamic is the training ground.
This all makes so much sense in terms of what is driving the behavior, but it raises a huge question. If the cause is this specific trauma, this wound from the Oedipal phase, why is it hidden? Why don't people remember this wound? Why don't they know they're seeking these situations out? Why isn't it conscious?
This is where the defense mechanism of repression comes in, and it is an incredibly powerful force. We have to remember how vulnerable a child is.
Completely dependent.
Entirely. They need to maintain a good working relationship with their parents for survival. They cannot consciously hold the belief that the people they depend on don't love them or that they are being fundamentally excluded.
The conflict would be too much.
That cognitive dissonance would be too destructive for their developing ego. So repression is literally an act of emotional survival. The child has to edit their own reality.
And how do they do that?
Repression pushes those traumatic events, the crushing disappointment, the painful emotions, and the distressing conclusions like I'm unlovable or I have to fight to be seen. It pushes all of it deep into the unconscious mind.
But it doesn't just disappear.
Oh no, it transforms. It becomes a subconscious belief, a blueprint that dictates their adult behavior without them ever realizing the source.
So what exactly is the child suppressing? Is it just a memory of a fight, or is it something deeper than that?
It's everything, all the memories, the perceptions, and the visceral emotional feelings associated with these painful experiences. The child is just too young, their verbal skills are underdeveloped, and most importantly, they have no power to change the situation.
They can't make their parents' relationship different.
They can't. So if the situation is overwhelmingly painful and they can't escape it, if they can't win the competition and they can't endure the rejection, their psyche just buries the whole conflict deep inside. To protect them from emotional collapse, the conflict becomes a hidden ghost.
And that hidden ghost then starts to distort the adult's perception of reality.
Yes.
They might see a current, perfectly normal partner as the rival or the unattainable object, even when that's not really true. The present becomes a stage for the past.
That is the tragic outcome of repression. The adult is compelled by this deep, unconscious pattern. They seek out the triangular drama because their psyche is desperate to finish the script.
They feel a magnetic pull.
A magnetic pull toward partners who are already taken or who are just emotionally distant because that replicates the high-stakes emotional distance of their childhood. It's the only dynamic that really feels like love to them because it feels like the competition for survival.
Wow. This just completely reframes the whole idea of a love triangle. It's not coincidence, it's compulsion.
It really is. It shows that the adult's choice of partner is often an attempt to heal the parent-child bond, not to forge a mature adult bond.
So what does this all mean then? I mean, our sources show how this intense early struggle for parental love creates an almost unavoidable blueprint for adult rivalry. The person is unconsciously looking for that third party just to legitimize the competition that defined their whole childhood. They're desperately hoping that this time, they'll finally win.
They'll shatter that mythical bond that excluded them. And the takeaway for you, the learner, is how profoundly psychoanalysis emphasizes the internal experience over objective reality.
Right.
The wound that drives this adult pattern is formed not just by a parent giving too little time, the objective neglect, but by the child's subjective conclusion that they were unloved. That, combined with their imagination magnifying the parental bond 100-fold into this insurmountable barrier.
So that raises a big question.
It raises a very important question for anyone looking at their own relationship history. When adults repeatedly find themselves in these triangular conflicts, are they really fighting the reality of the present situation and the people involved? Or are they unknowingly battling a vastly magnified, repressed emotional ghost from their past that never got its final scene?
Something for you to mull or explore on your own.
Exactly.
That's a powerful note to end on. Thank you for diving deep with us into the hidden roots of these complex relationships. We'll see you next time on The Deep Dive.
Please like, subscribe, and leave a comment. If you want to overcome betrayal, break toxic cycles, take control of your relationship choices, read How to Deal with a Love Triangle. The link is below the video.